Later today, President Trump will be signing executive orders on auto and other tariffs, and some friends of ours are going to be there, so stay tuned over the next few days for some exclusive coverage. Yesterday, White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt heralded today with these words. Looking ahead to tomorrow, April 2nd will go down in history as one of the most important days in modern American history. And she is right, because this goes beyond liberating us from a set of bad policies. This is akin to the American Revolution, when our forefathers said, no, we will no longer live under your system of government and economics. What are the fundamental principles of that system? It's oligarchy, the rule of the few. But it's worse than that. This system rejects the idea that mankind is unique, that he is a creator, that he can discover universal principles which will allow him to act on our world for the better, and for ourselves and for our posterity. We freed ourselves from the British, not over tea taxes, but over this image of man. Our founding fathers declared that all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. Now, oligarchism goes way back in human history, and it includes Aristotle, the British liberal philosophers like Adam Smith, existentialists like Nietzsche, and the rabid green ideology of today. Oligarchism says we are merely creatures of our sense and not mind, and that we have to be subservient to those of a better bloodline, or to be ruled by the magic of the marketplace, or to surrender to Gaia, Mother Earth. What's the form oligarchism has taken in recent decades? Commonly, people say socialism or maybe communism. But that misses the mark, because the beneficiary of this system is not a nameless government bureaucracy. There is plenty of that, and Elon Musk and Doge are taking dead aim at that, to the continual screeching of the mainstream media and the Democratic Party. And that screeching is being illuminated by the foundation-financed protests who are setting fire to Teslas around the country. I'm always glad to give a tip of the hat to the Babylon Bee for putting things in the right perspective. Yesterday, they had a post with the headline, touching. Liberals spell out coexist with burning Teslas. But the bureaucracy which Musk is challenging is in service of something else. And that something is a corporatist and financier elite that comes down much more on the side of fascism than it does communism. Look at the European Union and Great Britain, both of which are emerging as the main opponents of Donald Trump's policies, both economic and strategic. This is where oligarchism has really come out of the closet. First, with the European nations giving up their economic and political sovereignty when they created the European Union. Second, with their total surrender to the green ideology and the self-destruction of their energy sectors, especially nuclear, and with it, the skyrocketing energy costs. Third, their complete abandonment of democratic rights and freedoms. J.D. Vance called it in his speech to the Munich Security Conference, and then the French put it all out there this week by convicting Marine Le Pen, the leading nationalist candidate for president, sentencing her to jail, and banning her from running for president for 5 years. And fourth, their attempts to roadblock President Trump's peace negotiations with Russia and Ukraine and their commitment to keep the war going, all with the possibility of still crossing a red line with Russia. This is the broader sense of that which President Trump is liberating us from today. And in keeping with our name, which comes from the Greek figure Prometheus, and which in Greek means forethought, we foreshadowed Liberation Day with an extraordinary deployment to the U.S. Congress last week. Our 7-person team visited 250 offices and had substantive discussions in many of them about Donald Trump's revival of the American system and Congress's necessary role in implementing it. We'll have more coverage of this on the Promethean Action website. I'm Susan Kokinda, and in this update, I'm going to talk about why Promethean Action is uniquely situated to lead you through this historic moment. And I hope that in the course of this, you will decide that subscribing to our newsletter and supporting us with a sustaining membership is the most appropriate thing you can do to celebrate Liberation Day. So before I start with the main focus of today's update, which is tariffs and Trump's challenge to the existing global financier system, I want to reference a statement made by EPA Director Lee Zeldin a few weeks ago, because it strikes at today's theme very clearly. When he announced 31 new deregulation actions taken to unleash American energy production, Zeldin said the following: "We are driving a dagger straight into the heart of the climate change religion to drive down cost of living for American families, unleash American energy, and bring auto jobs back to the United States and more." He said it. Climate change religion. The idea that we have to surrender to nature, that our existence and our economic activity is a plague on Mother Earth, is a pagan religion. We've covered extensively the administration's actions in unleashing energy production across the spectrum, from clean coal to natural gas and nuclear, and in mining and minerals extraction and other areas. Brian Lance gave a class last Saturday on how many projects and how many jobs are already in the pipeline because of this, and you can find that on our website. But let's get to the big news of Liberation Day. Donald Trump's imposition of tariffs to revive and protect our manufacturing and to set us on the path of becoming a manufacturing superpower once again. Now, we've all been bombarded with headlines and bloviating commentaries about the disruptions, uncertainty, recession, trade war, and dwindling support for Trump. Here are a few of the headlines. But I want to look at two other headlines which get a little closer to reality. Trump poised to reshape global economy. Trump set to announce reciprocal tariffs in a risky move that could reshape the economy. There you have it. Reshape the economy. The disruptions, the negative impacts, the pain. That is what the former masters of the world economy are feeling, as Donald Trump challenges a free trade orthodoxy, which has ruled the world with increasing destructiveness for over 40 years. Oren Cass, the chief economist of the American Compass, which does reflect some understanding of the American system of economics, did an interview with Jon Stewart on The Daily Show on March 31st, which as of this morning has almost 1 million views, and a whole lot of freaked out comments from Stewart's liberal audience. But in that interview, both Cass and Stewart talked about the fact that breaking from 40 years of free trade policy is akin to a fundamental heresy. Cass said, "We went through a period of 30 or 40 years where conservatives had way too much faith in markets, just trusting that if you get out of the way, you're going to get great outcomes. Conservatives have been seeing, especially over the last decade, a lot of the things that we care about, things everyone cares about, like do jobs pay enough to support a family? Are we too dependent on China for everything? Can we make computer chips in this country?" Markets were perfectly happy to give us really bad answers on those questions. That's because markets are fundamentally pagan, making their decisions purely on the basis of monetary profit, rather than the physical health and well-being of a nation's economy, its workforce, its overall population, and its future. One not unimportant side note of this issue is the announcement by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent earlier this week of sanctions against the financiers of major drug cartels, especially the Sinaloa cartel. The role of international banks, and especially British banks, in financing the world's drug trafficking has been a focus of our organization's work for decades, going back to the 1970s. This modern-day extension of the Opium War, which Britain conducted against China in the 19th century, and the current toll it is taking in lives, highlights the pagan nature of anything that makes a profit economics. And all of that is what Donald Trump and his team are challenging and replacing with American economics. We've covered the various statements of key members of the Trump team reflecting this very clear understanding of the new economic language of physical production and national economic sovereignty. Now, this is also causing a political realignment, as seen most clearly in the statement put out by the UAW and a companion video produced by UAW President Shawn Fain. On March 26th, the UAW welcomed Trump's announcement of 25% tariffs on auto imports. We applaud the Trump administration for stepping up to end the free trade disaster that has devastated working-class communities for decades. Ending the race to the bottom in the auto industry starts with fixing our broken trade deals, and the Trump administration has made history with today's actions. And then the UAW told the Democratic Party that the party is over. The UAW and the working class in general couldn't care less about party politics. Working people expect leaders to work together to deliver results. The UAW has been clear. We will work with any politician, regardless of party, who is willing to reverse the decades of working class people going backwards in the most profitable times in our nation's history. These tariffs are a major step in the right direction for auto workers and blue-collar communities across the country. Now, I want you to focus on that while you think about the results of the Wisconsin election yesterday, where the liberal Democrat won by about 10 points, despite Elon Musk's major intervention into the state. As someone who is deeply involved in state party politics in the neighboring state of Michigan, here's the deal. If social and political issues dominate a state race, especially when you don't have Donald Trump himself at the top of the ticket, if instead social and political issues dominate the race, as was kind of inevitable in a state Supreme Court race, the Democrats will have the advantage. What we must do, and what Donald Trump is doing with his reshaping of the economy, is restoring to Americans their productive identity. If people rediscover what it is to be a creative and productive member of a prospering and advancing society, the kind of identity we had in the 1960s and the 1950s, when one income could support a family, people will figure out which party represents them. We saw that when we went to auto plants in Michigan in 2023 during the strike, and in 2024 when we just went to plant gates, and we found that the majority of workers, whether Black or white or Hispanic or male or female, supported Donald Trump. They didn't listen to the UAW leadership in the 2024 elections, which told them to vote Democratic. Now that leadership has had its come to Jesus moment on tariffs and is no longer permanently married to the Democratic Party. But what this shows is that this is the high ground on which we fight. So happy Liberation Day. As Donald Trump truthed out a few minutes ago, this is an exciting day, Liberation Day. This is the single greatest salvation for not just small business, but for America. So this has been your midweek update. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for watching. Please take a moment and subscribe to our free newsletter at prometheanaction.com.